Emmanuel Macron is at risk of Frexit as France has reached peak Euroscepticism during the coronavirus pandemic, according to commentator George Galloway. Former MP George Galloway has explained France is harbouring a grudge against the European Union for not receiving aid during the height of the coronavirus pandemic. Mr. Galloway noted EU states were stealing PPE from each other and none want to take on the burden of helping the EU's economy. He added that the EU's standing in the worst affected countries such as, Italy and Spain, has been devastated. Speaking to Express, Mr. Galloway said, Spain was then abandoned and France is now at peak Euroscepticism as the Germans steadfast refuse to help out financially with France's extraordinary burden. For the EU, I would say it is a null point. Mr. Galloway added, I think it's been a catastrophe all around, but for the EU in particular, it has devastated the EU's standing in the worst affected countries. The U in EU is a misnomer. It's ferrets in a sack. No one is standing with anyone else. In fact, members of the EU are stealing, like thieves, the medical material and ventilators destined for other EU countries. Of course they have no intention of sharing the financial burden fairly across the membership of the EU. German Chancellor Angela Merkel had opposed a proposal by French President Emmanuel Macron for a recovery fund that would, for the first time, bind all 27 member states to raise debt jointly. One senior diplomat said, initially they were on quite different positions. They reviewed the risk of a split in the EU. But the two countries have since joined to propose a €500 billion £448 billion common debt and transfer it to the regions and industries hit hardest. It would be a top-up to the EU's 2021–2027 budget, already close to €1 trillion. Diplomats in Brussels, Paris and Berlin familiar with the discussions said Merkel had dropped Germany's long-held opposition to mutualizing debt to fund other member states, when it became clear the EU itself was in peril. The court ruling in effect put the onus on EU governments themselves to fund any fiscal response.